Hey, this is Truth Radio Network, broadcasting from the East Coast. This is your host, Fawkes Niner. And today is a bit different than I had expected, because I had expected that the other day I'm in a chat room here on Darkcity Radio, the website, and we're having a conversation with a character who goes by the name of Bainan Shah, saying that the 9/11, we got talking about 9/11, to which he refers to as a conspiracy theory. Well, so I get in a discussion about that, and long story short, I wanted him to come on my show today and discuss his skeptical points of view in a very reasonable, rational fashion. Unfortunately, even though I made him aware that the show was airing today and that I would like him to come on, and even though he had agreed to coming on, it didn't happen that way conveniently enough, which is okay. I mean, when it comes to a chat room, you can talk all you want. When it comes to the radio, that's a different story. So instead, this is going to be a one-sided conversation with a New Yorker by the name of Sherry and a British Columbian dude, which is Cannon. For all you cats out there who really don't know North America all too well, nor do you look at a map. I myself didn't know where British Columbia was until he told me. So we're going to be talking about the hardcore, the legitimate evidence supporting our claim that 9/11 was an inside job orchestrated by our government or factions thereof. Information supporting our claims based on a scientific level in which we can state our sources and the science that we used to back our claims. So, that being said, I'd like to bring on Barry Prince to tell me what he's been... Because I myself only had about 6 hours to research this. I thought that the whole 9/11 thing went out the window when 80% of Americans realized that, or 75% realized that it was done by the government. Half of which know but don't want to know, and the other half know, but, what can you do? We still get out there, we still get online, and we still tell people about it, but basically it's 10 years old. And if you don't already know, you're probably never gonna at this point. But still yet, this is what I've prepared for, and this is what we're going to talk about today. So, Barry Prince in the BC. How you doing, man?
Good. How you doing, Fawkes?
We're doing great, brother. So what do you have for the show today?
Well,
first, hold on a second. I'm sorry. First, I'd like to bring up the most important detail, most important aspect that we're going to be starting off with here today, which is the skeptical claim is that 9/11 was done by terrorists. The buildings were hit and they collapsed due to fire damage or something or other. Now, we have firefighters that claim that, in fact, they heard explosions in the base ground floor, the lobby, before, in fact, the building collapsed. Plenty of firefighters have said this, and when you talk about controlled demolition, implosions, Silverstein saying he was going to pull the building because there was too much damage and it had to go, and when you talk about Building 7, the idea that the buildings were controlled demolition really shoots down the idea that it was done by terrorists. Take a listen to this, if you will.
What channel is that, pal? Is it live? 631-226-9595. Tell my sister I'm okay.
What happened? There's an explosion. He was in the lobby and then fucking the third explosion. The whole lobby collapsed on us. Horrible.
No, you don't want to know.
The whole building just collapsed on us inside the lobby.
Was that a secondary explosion?
Yes, it was.
That was the plan, probably.
Yeah, definitely.
Now that, as few views as it has, as many as it should, is a first-hand account, I would say, judging by the time of day, about maybe 3 hours, maybe about an hour after the building came down, it looks to be about 12 o'clock. I don't really know time frames. It's been quite a while, and I was only 6 years old when this happened. Now, that being said, this is our BC correspondent, Barry Prince.
Well, I don't really know where to start there, Fawkes, that there's so much evidence surrounding Building 7. As far as I'm concerned, it is the biggest smoking gun of all three buildings. Building 7 wasn't hit by an airplane, as we all know, and it collapsed at 5:20 in the afternoon in a perfect symmetrical collapse into its own footprint. The building had 2 or 3 small isolated pockets of fires, and as the day went on, these fires were witnessed to get smaller and smaller as the day went on. The building was built actually with 20 outside main support columns and 24 interior columns. The building had approximately 2,800 supporting cross-member columns of they were average 3 to 4 points. These were very, very strong. They would require 500,000 pounds per support to make them release. Upon collapse of the building, it would have taken 400 of these connections to be disappearing every second for the building to collapse the way it did. Every computer model that NIST has provided is very, very, very suspect, to say the least. The computer models, it shows the connections.
Now, Barry, one
go ahead.
thing,
I wanted to get into technical. If you want to, right. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, just humor me if you will. A plane flies into the center of a tower. Now, they would have you believe that the building collapsed due to fire damage. But the building was built like a tree. Now, if you think about it, if the building were to collapse due to fire damage, it would collapse from that point upwards and split in half, not fall and collapse into its own footprint from the ground down.
Yeah, and this computer model actually shows the failure of one beam on the bottom floor of the building, and that beam collapsing pulled all the other beams down in the building in a split second. All 44 supporting columns had to be compromised at the same time, in other words, for the building to fall symmetrically the way it did. The damage to the building was actually asymmetrical damage. It was only damaged slightly on the one side, and the fires were very small, yet the collapse is totally symmetrical. And the actual first 100 feet, NIST has reported on the first 2 reports they didn't acknowledge this, but in their final draft of the report, NIST acknowledges that the first 100 feet of Tower 7 collapse was free fall speed. The collapse slows down slowly, and then it actually accelerates at the bottom. And they have they said they have no explanation for that happening. That's their exact words. The debris field also, one of the notes you should make note of is that it fell perfectly into its own footprint. The debris field was no more than 150 feet around the building.
There was no resistance. Building 7 fell at approximately 6.5 seconds. It was on the ground, and the 2 towers, which were about twice as big, maybe less, fell at about 9.5 seconds, 10.5 seconds. So all 3 buildings fell at free fall speed. Now, if it was just one building, if it was just building 7 that did this, we would have much less ground held here. But unfortunately, all 3 buildings fell exactly the same way. And just a little.
We have three.
All 3 buildings were owned by the same guy.
Yeah, well, 3 situations in one day that have never happened before in history and are physically impossible.
Of course, they are, according to my sources, the first 3 steel frame buildings in the history of man ever to collapse due to fire. Now, there was a building, I think, in Madrid, a steel frame building that had been affected by fire. Was the plane? I don't really know, but it's sort of the same scenario. But the building withstood. Everything else is shit, but the building withstood. You'd have to look into it. I wish I had written that down. But the buildings, the World Trade Centers, were designed to withstand the blow of an aircraft because of a DC-10 that had hit the Empire State Building back in '48. And so after that, buildings that were made, especially being aircraft high, were constructed so that they could withstand the impact of an aircraft, especially a building that massive should have, designed the way it is, taken that blow.
No problem at all. The building, actually, the core columns were designed, and this is in the architectural studies that I did on the building, the core columns were designed to support 3 times of load-bearing weight above them. The outside core columns on the towers were designed to support 5 times the weight above them. So, in other words, as these buildings were built, they were built stronger at the bottom than they were actually at the top, the center core being the main structure of the building. Physics tells us that 10 stories collapsing on the top of the north tower doesn't have enough physical energy to collapse 80 floors below it. At the best, it would take out 10 stories and the energy would be gone. Where does the energy come to make 80 stories and 80,000 tons of steel disappear in front of our eyes? It's not physically possible.
Well, Sherry, I'm assuming, has something she wants to say about this, seeing as how she's a New Yorker herself.
Hi there. Yeah, well, listen, I don't think we should go by anything that NIST has to say, because everything NIST does is they doubled it, they multiplied it, they subtracted 20%. They're full of shit, in my opinion. NIST is there's science applications, international companies. It's the same outfit. Okay, they're designed there to work for the people who covered up this whole entire gigantic. I don't know what you could call it, because I can't even wrap my brain around it. That's how huge 9/11 is. But let's not even go into the implication of the building in Madrid, I think, burnt for 24 hours, the fire, and the core columns, the frame was still there. Now, right where you were saying, Fawkes, is that the building was still there, the frame was still there, so by any means, the tower should have stood. So Building 7 was, I have this report that I'm reading from is suggesting demolition orders from Blackstone, who was the owner of World Trade 7, and a mortgage with KPMG, which is the accountant for everybody that is bad. Okay, so we know that it was demolished at 5:20 p.m. on 9/11. Now, there was a mortgage that was allegedly a bogus escrow for the syndicated lenders who used the Amex Citigroup as a prime contractor. And there was a thick diesel system project to camouflage the arson and sabotage of the building and the destruction of evidence of ongoing securities frauds. Because it's really what we're looking at, security frauds within the SEC, of that $1 trillion missing that was reported missing the day before. Now, KPMG had used its insider escrow position to double up insurance on the World Trade Center mortgage so that its demolition would generate an estimated $400 million in profits with the demolition team and the Blackstone private equity investors. Now, this article or this finding says that this analysis excludes what could not have been explained anyway, the observed characteristics of the demolition, i.e. no percussive sound effects heard, therefore, not due to explosives, not heat from fires fed by the fuel supply tanks, therefore, not due to fires fed by the fuel supply tanks, and not enough structural impact, therefore, not due to damage from the falling debris of World Trade Center 1.
I would like y'all to hear something before we continue.
Go for it.
Is pulling. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched it collapse.
That is not the video I was looking for. But in Silverstein's own words, he says there was so much damage, so much loss of, so we decided to pull it, and then the building collapsed. Pull being a demolition term for implode. That sucks.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But the fact that Silverstein, not only did he take out insurance policies on the towers weeks before. What I don't think anybody knows is that he was in competition for these buildings with his brother-in-law. His brother-in-law died of a heart attack during the bidding for the buildings, and lo and behold, left the way for Silverstein to buy the property. And in the weeks before the towers were blown to obliteration, Silverstein got them at a bargain price, and then he took out the insurance policies. And then when they were demolished, he then went to, I believe it was Swiss Re, and said, wait a minute, there are two different attacks because there were two different planes. So he collected a nice chunk of money that went to...
Yeah, he fought the lawyers in court, the insurance providers in court, to obtain double what he was earned from the buildings collapsing, because he claimed that 2 planes, 2 disasters, 2 insurance policies. He
Right.
made quite a bit of money off of those people's lives that were lost.
Yeah,
And the buildings, too, of course.
Of course. And the whole, this during my investigation of the 9/11 pager intercept, which was provided for me by WikiLeaks, Freedom of Information, in the actual pager intercept, which has now been scrubbed, I have a copy of it, so go me. There is a demolition pre-check in these pager intercepts, which identifies 3 different teams that are checking what demos, what numbers they have to push. Say, okay, go for it. Now, when I went back to check the 9/11 pager intercept, that thing was scrubbed. So you can't tell me that was not a demolition pre-check. It's clearly evident that it was. Now, it was clearly evident that, besides this whole securities fraud thing that was being covered up or was trying to be, obliterated, most people do not know that one of the main targets of 9/11 was a man by the name of Carlton Bartels. And Carlton Bartels was the CEO of CO2E.com, which was a company belonging to Cantor Fitzgerald. Cantor Fitzgerald they lost about 700 of their employees. What people don't know is that Carlton Bartels was the government. He was the forefront advisor to the government on climate control, climate change. He was the guy. And he had a patent pending that was a residential carbon trading platform that was ultimately used by the Chicago Climate Exchange in January of 2002 when they were setting up the Chicago Climate Exchange, which dealt with the whole trading these units on the stock market. They did 5 different pollution, different kinds of gases that were polluting our environment. So all these companies like DuPont, Motorola, International Paper, what have you, they were paying to pollute the earth, and they were swapping spit between each other. But they basically, Carlton Bartels was involved in a conference. It was a two-year, 4-series conference with the Naval War College, PricewaterhouseCoopers, a man by the name of Thomas P.M. Barnett, Arthur Zabrowski, Philip Ginsburg, and some other bad mamma jammas. And it is alleged, it's not alleged, because in the pager intercepts it shows that his credit derivatives program was being stolen chunk by chunk every minute out of the 24-hour period. And he was stuck on the 104th floor of the North Tower. And when he was killed in 9/11, Franklin Raines went to his wife, Jane Bartels, and I don't know what was said because I can't get a hold of her because she's just, she's still alive, but she hasn't disappeared off the face of the earth. He had her sign over the patent to him, and they marketed the patent, and then they sold it in Canada. So they started using it in Canada, I believe, December 21st, 2001. And they couldn't even wait until 2002. That's how many these guys are.
Apparently we have, sorry to cut you off there, but we have, we're going to have Boulevard Nights calling in here soon, and I'd like to actually move on a bit to something more obvious. Check this out. Okay, so we with the recent incident that took place in Boston, knowing there, were made aware that it was an inside job, that it was orchestrated by factions of our United States government and some intelligence agencies, but this was made obvious because of the drills that were being run according to the Boston Globe and the speakers making announcements at the marathon. We were aware of this because it had happened at 7/7 and 9/11, and people say, well, why would they continue doing the same thing? And it wouldn't that draw a lot of attention? And the answer, of course, is because it works. Now, there were drills being run on 9/11, flight drills that kept occupied the majority of our Air Force, while they were running drills. The drills, of course, that were being run were for the event that could take place, or at the time was taking place, conveniently enough, where planes would be hijacked, ran into the World Trade Centers, and that was the nature of the drill. However, that is exactly what was happening. So, if anybody was to be alerted, they would think it is just a drill. That being said, we have the same thing with 9/11, the same thing with 7/7, and the same thing with Boston, and a few other false flag attacks. Barry or Sherry, do you guys have anything to say about that?
You mean the exercises that they were doing? Yeah. If you look at the video of the Naudet brothers who had the first hit on the North Tower, what they're doing is it's actually with Chief Pfeiffer of the fire department. He died in 9/11 running up in the towers. But what they were doing is you could see them pulling up what do you call those things? Those things in the ground that pull up and they go down to the gas, like a gas thing. Somebody called it a fake gas leak, which was right near the high school that they were running this drill out of. And the Naudet brothers happened to be, one of the kids happened to be there, doing like a ride along with the fire department, which I thought was weird. He just happened to be playing himself with Chief Pfeiffer, at the precise point of where that surface-to-air missile hit the North Tower. Well,
I don't. That's the thing. I entertain the idea that the towers were hit by missiles, but I also entertain the idea that they were, there's a lot of different.
There's a lot of different.
It's a lot more. It's a lot easier. It's a lot.
Let's just say it was hit by something.
It was hit by something for sure. Now, the Pentagon was definitely hit by a missile because out of all places, only one camera was working at that time when this supposed plane hit it. And the only camera that was working apparently only captured 4 frames. All 4 frames don't display at all an image of a plane flying in. All you see is a weird white blur, which doesn't seem to be the shape of an airplane, rather a missile, but nobody can really say for sure. For all I know, it was a laser from outer space, But I do know there was an explosion, and I also know that there are no witnesses that can verify whether it was a plane or not, and there sure as hell are no pictures of the wreckage that are, reliable.
Well, what I can tell you for sure is that let's talk about NORAD, Northeast Air Defense. Is that why were the fighter jets that were supposed to be intercepting these planes? They were flying at a third of their top speed. Okay, and if they were coming out of Otis Air Force Base, and Otis Air Force Base is 153 miles from the World Trade Center. So if these F-15s can fly at 1,875 plus miles per hour, if you calculate in 2 minutes and account for the acceleration, it should take under 7 minutes to get from Otis to New York City. So these F-15s should have intercepted United Airlines United 175 before it hit the South Tower at 9:03. Yet NORAD is telling us that these 2 F-15s were still 8 minutes away and 70 miles out. So what were these 2 F-15s?
Well, you have to keep in mind that they were running drills just for this reason. They were running drills so that all of the airplanes could be occupied so that nobody could stop these planes from flying in. I believe that planes did hit the towers, but I believe that they were designed to. I believe that this was well set up so that they would run into those towers. The people involved were trained at, I really wish I had more time for this, but I know that they were trained by our people, by our faction, just to do exactly what it is that they did. Osama bin Laden and George Bush were well in bed together, so point being,
Right. Like these crisis actors that the FEMA hired for the Boston bombing, or people that were staged as actors to basically what I call a huge psyop of being in New York City and saying, you know, oh, what was it? Oh, there was a plane that hit there. Okay, it was a plane. So now everybody in New York City thinks that a plane hit the building, but nobody saw a plane hit the building. If you ask anybody. Yeah.
Well,
that's the problem.
I'm gonna have to drop this because I don't know. But if you are from New York, have you asked people? Have you been around and asked people if they saw a plane? Sherry? Well, all right then, Barry. How you doing, man?
Good. I'm just sitting here listening to this go on.
Good. Now, could you present some evidence for us to continue this conversation?
Well,
anyway,
couple questions, guys. Couple questions that we gotta ask ourselves.
Hold on, Sherry.
Oh my God.
Oh fuck. You know, it's just, I like I said, it is very likely that there was no plane, but right now we have to stick to the general consensus that there was one because that's what we know, that's what we can all agree on, basically. So, with that in mind, what do you have for me, man? About those drills, like I was saying, you probably have far more information than I do.
Well, it seems like every terrorist act that's happened in the United States in the last 10 years, there's conveniently a drill going on, coinciding with the exact things that happened in the exact same vicinity. I mean, Sandy Hook, I don't know exactly how far away the drill was being run, but they were running a drill on the morning of the attack at Sandy Hook, and I believe it was 4 miles away from the school, the exact duplication of what happened in Sandy Hook. The same thing happened on 9/11. It's just how many coincidences. It's like they're rubbing it in our faces, you know?
Well, the thing is, and when it comes to rubbing in your faces, I think they just make it obvious to test their country's loyalty, but I'll get into that in another show if I ever feel like it. Point being, when it comes to terrorism, I'm going to tell you right now, all terrorism, and when people say we're just trying to protect ourselves from terror, yes, well, the terrorists have won, buddy. Because I don't fly. I don't fly anymore. I ride Greyhound for this reason, but about, I'd say 15 years ago, our country was a much nicer place to live. I myself only experienced 6 years of it, and then this happened. But everybody says life was so much better before 9/11. The 90s were kicking, man. The 80s were grooving or whatever, but now everybody's living in fear that every time they turn on the news networks, they're going to see a terrorist act, and so justifies locking down cities like Watertown and all that lovely stuff. So apparently the terrorists have won. You know what I mean, Barry?
Well, they've raised the level of fear in America to unprecedented heights, and they're adding confusion with the people, and it's just one attack after another. And it's designed to attack the psychological well-being of the American people, because when you combine all these things together, they really don't know what to do, and their brains aren't working the way they should be. They'll accept things they wouldn't normally accept just to get rid of the pain.
Barry, do you have greyhounds?
No, I have huskies, actually, but they're really attacking the psychological well-being of the American people. And that's what I see. I see an all-out attack on the psychological well-being of the people, because, like I said, once you get fear, confusion added together with a little bit of madness, people really start to accept things they wouldn't normally accept under normal rationale. And I see that's what's happening right now in the States, and that's why I think they're going to pull off another one here right away. Because they got the foot of the gas.
Back to the evidence factor. That is what we've got to remember. We came on here in the first place for. With all of the facts coming together with 9/11 now, we've got the Project for a New American Century saying that it would be absolutely necessary in order to bring forth what they're trying to do, to have a catastrophic, catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor, 12 months later, to Pearl Harbor. Coincidence? As the video says, yeah, right, you know? But with all of this,
you look at the extremes they went to in Boston, Fawkes, and if another attack came on American soil right now of greater magnitude, it would really throw the people into a frenzy. And they probably accept any idea that the government presented to them. That's a scary thought.
Yeah, well, as I said previously, my family actually applauds it and says if it were to happen again, they would fully support it in the name of terror. And I'm like, do you know that these people were held at gunpoint, probably children too? You know, we've got some weird people in our military. They probably get off on that, but they did this. And when I brought up that little factoid there, my family says, "Oh, nah, they ain't holding them at gunpoint." And I'm like, "Do you want me to show you the video? I will show you the video." And they're like, "Nah, no, I can't do that. I'm too busy." I'm like, "All right then, don't argue with me." But it's the same MO. I like with okay, buildings, for instance, inside job buildings. Okay, with the towers, it is. They say that it collapsed due to fire damage. Okay, but as we already know, steel frame buildings can't collapse due to fire damage because steel melts at approximately what temperature, Barry?
2,750 degrees.
Well,
maximum temperature. Maximum temperature. With 9 or 10 studies on the building. The fires are actually burning in the building, and they estimated the temperature at a max of 1,100, but more close to 750 to 800 degrees. Well, you could take 700 or 800 degrees and hold it to steel all day, and it won't affect it. What were the studies they? Go ahead. I was going to tell you about a study they did. I was just going to tell you about a study that the Worcester Polytechnical Institute in England did a huge study on a building where they subjected steel to 2,000 degrees for extended periods of time. And after 2 hours, a 2,000 degree temperature exposed directly to the steel melted a variance of 7 inches. Yet NIST reports the steel in buildings were melting 40 inches in 45 minutes. A variance of 40 inches in 45 minutes is what they reported.
Now, brother, a skeptic would tell you that the reason why the metal burned the way it did is because of rocket fuel. Is there any way we can contradict this?
Kerosene fuel. Kerosene fuel, and it does not burn hot. Kerosene fuel fire, maximum in ideal conditions, under laboratory conditions, 1,100 degrees. That's with full exposure to oxygen. If you look at the fires in the building, they're burning black. That represents a fire that's starved by oxygen. People
were crossing. They were climbing down the building, weren't they? Were there reports of people either escaping from the building where the fire was burning or crossing over or something?
Well, they got a video standing right in the hole of a lady standing right in the impact hole of the North Tower, and this is just before she ends her life. But there's no indication of a hard fire burning at that point with extreme temperatures because she'd have been scorched. The temperatures of those fires, it's documented, were very, very low. And you have to ask yourself what happened to the steel.
Exactly. And that
doesn't happen, Fawkes. It just doesn't happen. And like you said, never before in history has steel frame building fell due to fire. And like I'm going to read in a couple things. The one down in Brazil, man, they estimated the temperature in that building 1,800 degrees for 24 hours. The whole inside of the building was destroyed and gutted. When the fire was over, the steel structure was like the day they built it. So, I mean, what we've got in the North Tower, we've got a fire going for an hour and 20 minutes. In the South Tower, we have a fire going for 45 minutes.
Right, not only that, the fire was going on at the halfway point going up towards the top of the building. If it was at the bottom of the building, then absolutely, I might subscribe to the idea that the building collapsed due to fire if I didn't know any better, but at the halfway point, the building should have rather split in half than collapsed completely. Now, with the firefighters claiming that there were explosions, who would we rather believe? Would we rather believe CNN or the heroes who actually walked into that building and risked their lives to save people inside. I myself prefer to trust the eyewitness.
Yes, there's many recorded and documented eyewitness reports of explosions up in North Tower and World Trade Center 7 prior to their collapse. So what was causing the explosions?
Well, Sherry's gone again. That's unfortunate. Usually that happens. Daniel, do you have something to say about this? Okay, well, with that being said, Barry, we keep saying in these shows that they're working their way up to something. That they're moving towards another terrorist attack, supposedly, but yet, I mean, over the past year, we have over the past year we have had 5 mass shootings. We've had all of this, so apparently they are working towards something. I just don't know why.
Well, yeah, look at the extremes they went to with Boston, what they did to their citizens, what they did with the implementation of martial law. I mean, if we look around the world, folks, we see lots of countries that have major bombs going off and hundreds of people killed, and there's never a reaction close to this. They grandstand this to the max, and that's just, as far as I'm concerned, a conditioning of the masses. And I feel now, if looking at it like a psychopath would look at it, this would be a perfect time to pull off another attack, because the American people didn't react the way I expected them to the intrusion of their rights, man. Fully automatic weapons pointed at people that are totally innocent, yanking them out of their houses, searching their houses without proper cause. It's just unbelievable. And I think that was just a feeler to find out how far the American people would let them push them. And they got their answer. And now would be a good time for another one. That's the way that's what I see.
John Bradley, the heroic Boston police officer, delivers milk to family on lockdown.
We're delivering your milk for you now, folks. You don't have to worry about the army outside your door.
I'm saying sure as hell didn't deliver milk. The dude was caught walking out with the milk. And here it is, right here, looking at the camera, taking a picture of his ass through a window. Hey, officer. Look back, dude.
We're here to protect you, buddy.
All right, we're here to protect you and steal your $4 a gallon of milk. Oh man, I don't know what the world's
America really is. America, the way I see it, Fawkes is in a real lot of trouble right now, and this is just another needle in the haystack. What they're doing and what they have been doing for the last years, you know.
Yeah, I'm sorry that this conversation out there for people listening that it had to go this way. As I said, we were originally planning, and we spent all day planning for this, and originally I was going to come on and started out this morning looking up information on Area 51. There are some videos of people who have actually gotten close enough to that facility to prove that it does exist, with pictures and, you know, this big black car standing on top of the hill watching you, stuff like that. You know, that's the kind of stuff I wanted to talk about today. But yet we got prompted to do the show because Rick, at least I was under the assumption that Ricky Rolls was going to be coming in here and debating us, but this didn't happen exactly the way I had intended. So, same old. Sherry?
You can blame me. It's my fault.
Sherry, it's not your fault. It's just when somebody contradicts your point of view, you would at least expect, and I mean, I'm a decent person. I won't Sean Hannity your ass. I won't Glenn Beck your ass. I will listen to everything you have to say and then pose my point of view. But unfortunately, that didn't go down the way I had planned it to, and nothing really does these days, so it didn't happen. And now we're talking amongst ourselves about that which we already know.
Right. And when someone doesn't have the wherewithal to then back up their claims or to back up what they're saying with somebody who actually has a question.
Well, actually, the guy in question here actually did try to back up what he's saying, but unfortunately, as uninformative as he claims we are, and as uninformative as he claims our sources, our unnamed sources are, he then directs me to a website called 9/11 Debunked, of which, of course, is yet another website, conveniently enough, which, although may name its sources like we do, it presents information that is rather entertaining than informative. He claims that I didn't read it. I read it. I just laughed my whole way through.
They are funny, 9/11 debunked, and Barry is right about that. You know, it's been 11 years, and we are in no better shape than we were on 2001 September 11th. We're in worse shape than we were as a nation, a country, a world as a whole, because little by little our personal freedoms are getting stolen. Little by little, our security is being taken away, and more the Department of Defense is spending money in other countries other than our own, and that's the one problem. They make it seem like on Claude Lewis this past weekend, where they had that moron from the Army, that psychologically brainwashed moron of a girl, saying that we were homegrown terrorists in America. I mean, what kind of crap is that? If anything, she's a homegrown terrorist, in my opinion.
Yeah,
right?
She probably is. In fact, all 6 of us in this room right now are, according to the United States government and some intelligence agencies, especially naming the Department of Homeland Security, we are terrorists. We are scaring people in order to achieve political gain, which of course we are not. We are just terrorists because we don't conform to the normal point of view. Have you ever, speaking of normal point of view, have you ever sat down and watched the news and then changed the channel to another news source and then seen them report the same exact story for the same exact period of time, and then realized that every single news source in America is reporting exactly the same thing in exactly the same way, just different stories at different times with different bias? Does that bother you that we are called terrorists or labeled as terrorists because we don't watch the news, nor do, well, I have television anyway?
I canceled my subscription, but Rachel Maddow, who Alex Jones called Pat yesterday, which I thought was hilarious, works for MSNBC, and MSNBC is owned by General Electric, just like, Fair and I were talking about. It's just, they're all owned by the same faction. They're all run by the same conglomerate. They're all told what to spit out. Only so much information, and if they do go over that information, people like Tank or Keith Olbermann get jacked. They're not proud.
Here's something from 9/11 Debunked about the sounds of explosions. It says, I don't know if that means anything. I mean, equate it to the building cowing down and pushing things out. I could have been electrical explosions. It could have been explosions from a kitchen, of course, according to Janitor Rodriguez. By the way, we're naming sources here. Janitor Rodriguez, who is once a hero, now a zero, according to the government. Whatever. They said there were no kitchens that used gas-powered fueling systems, and so there could not be any explosion. It also claims that the sounds of explosion were taken out of context, and you're right, they were taken out of context. I heard explosions in the lobby, and then the building came down. Great context, and I'll keep it in mind next time something like this goes down, if you know what I mean. I tend to take what firefighters say out of context very seriously, because they're the ones fighting the war, and of course the people in high places are the ones moving the chess pieces as if it's a game, as Barry says, psychopaths.
Sociopaths. Psychotic sociopaths, right?
Well, I don't know about psychotic, but I would say psychopathic, sociopathic. Well, sociopathic is a word for those who are psychopathic, but yet do not choose to not conform to society standards and stuff like that, sociopathic, but psychopathic, these people control society. So sociopathic is not an accurate term to define what these people are. They make the rules, and then they break the rules. And apparently, according to the site, they're saying that it was electrical fire hurts fix that trait. This is just going to bother me. Anyway,
It's will bother me. About Willie Rodriguez, the janitor. His first name is William. So don't leave that out of the report of the evidence of witnesses. He was interviewed by us. So we're about 30 firefighters.
Was he interviewed by a psychopathic misery monkey?
The 9/11 Commission? I believe so.
Group of misery monkeys, indeed.
Misery monkey. None of his testimony was even